Workers' Rights Board is really a place to make sure that workers who are facing workers' rights violations and human rights violations have a place where important community leaders and elected officials can hear their testimony and help deliberate on important recommendations and a proposal for the employer to help resolve the issues. This is a place where we want to uplift the stories and the voices of workers. And so we're just so honored that you are here to stand in solidarity and stand with the workers. We, as a North Bay chapter, have been here for 6 years. This is our 7th Workers' Rights Board hearing, and this will be recorded and available on Facebook for you. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to our co-chair, Andy Merrifield. Thank you.
Good morning. Good afternoon, I'm sorry. I am Andy Merrifield, as Mara said, thank you. I first want to introduce our panel today, starting with Victoria Fleming, the Vice Mayor of Santa Rosa. And second is Dr. Jenny Fish, a family medicine physician and the co-founder of Health Professionals for Equality and Community Empowerment. Third is Esther Lemus, the Vice Mayor of the town of Windsor. Fourth is Nancy Dobbs, a retired media executive and a health policy consultant. Fifth is Reverend Lindsay Bell Kerr, Christ Church United Methodist in Santa Rosa. And additionally is Bonnie Petty. Bonnie is my co-chair on this panel. What I want to do very briefly now is to introduce why we are doing this particular Workers' Review Board. As Mara pointed out, this is part of an ongoing process to hear the issues and concerns of working people in the North Bay. In this case, the National Union of Healthcare Workers, which represents 740 caregivers at Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital, have been in bargaining with hospital management for over a year to earn a fair contract. And they have approached us about this issue. Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital is the largest acute care hospital in the county and the only level 2 trauma center in a 4-county area. It is owned by Providence Healthcare, which owns hospitals throughout the West. Some issues, most clearly worker safety, have become more acute since the pandemic. The COVID-19 began nearly 7 months ago, but all of the issues, including worker safety, far predate this crisis. The intransigency of the Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital management and problems associated with this led to a 5-day strike this summer by the NUHW in hopes of getting a fair settlement for the benefiters of the caregivers so they can continue to provide the best patient care possible. NUHW has asked this panel to hold a hearing to educate the community and to move this process forward. We have agreed to do so and have had preliminary meetings in advance of today. But towards that end, we are going to now hear from caregivers at the hospital who will be giving testimony on the situation and the issues. Please proceed.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Cool. My name is Tammy Campbell. I've been a radiologic technologist at Santa Rosa Memorial for 12 years next week. and I'm on the NUHW bargaining team. I would never treat my patients the way that Providence treats me. Providence has baked mistreatment into its business model, which is built on greed, disrespect, and a lack of communication. They purposely understaff. In X-ray, it is notable when the evening shift is fully staffed. The day shift regularly struggles to keep up. And the minute things get quiet, they send one of us home. Their staffing choices not only endanger caregivers who are forced to do a larger share of work with little help, they endanger patients, delay patient care, and, given recent headlines, are adding to the number of COVID cases in our community. Even before the pandemic, we struggled to fill shifts when employees called out sick or went on leave. It's much worse with COVID. We've had weeks where half of our transporters were out sick and weren't replaced. When a colleague had COVID and was out for weeks, I don't think we filled any of his shifts. Last month on the evening shift, all the X-ray techs were in the operating room, leaving no one available to respond if a trauma came in. Our relationship with Providence is transactional. They do what's best for them while asking us to give our all, but it's simply not sustainable. We're having to say no to working extra shifts, working late, or pulling doubles because we're exhausted, and we know that whatever we give will never be enough. While these are not new issues, they're far worse under Providence. This fall is going to be unbearable. The pandemic combined with flu season and fire season in an environment where we don't have a contract, not to mention sufficient help or PPE, is too much to ask. My coworkers and I are showing the strain. These are dedicated professionals with decades of experience. We're barely holding on. Some of us are dealing with retribution from management, and I wonder if I'll be next. Insomnia, depression, and anxiety are becoming more common to the point where my colleagues are seeking treatment for those conditions. People are looking for other jobs, and 5 strong techs have left in the last 2 months. Providence may think it can easily replace us, but my department hasn't been able to fill openings. We're relying more and more on travelers, which backs up onto regular staff who must train and supervise a revolving door of new people. Providence accused us of endangering our patients when we went on strike, but in fact, it's Providence that's been endangering all of us. We've tried for more than a year to convey these concerns to Providence. Thank you for giving us this forum. I pray that it will help.
Thank you guys so much. My name is Taylor Davison, and I am speaking on behalf of Mito Gonzalez, who is also a vice president like I am, who sits on the executive board of NUHW. Unfortunately, he's had a COVID-related incident in his own family, and so he couldn't be here today as a result of what's going on. So it hits very close to home. I have worked for Providence for almost 15 years. Coming up, I'm in my 14th year right now, and I'm going to go off video for a second so I can read his statement to you. My name is Mito Gonzalez. I'm a laboratory patient service rep, and I've been at Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital for 25 years. When I first started working at Memorial, the nuns were in charge, and it was a great place to work. We worked hard, and the bonuses went to all of us, the workers that care for our patients. We had holiday parties, we sang, we celebrated our successes together. Workers received recognition and gifts for their years of service. We felt appreciated. We were encouraged to stay and grow. Memorial was a place that everyone wanted to be working in the healthcare and wanted to be. Unfortunately, those days are long gone. Just like many of our dedicated coworkers, all we now get is abused and disrespect. They lead with cruelty. Memorial has used a place where we felt like family and now treat us like children, and they're the abusive parents. We provide the care that our patients need, but Providence sees as nothing more as an expense. They got money going out and they refuse to invest in us. Even though Providence has more than $12 billion in cash reserves, and Memorial has reported an operating profit of $42.8 million just in the last 6 months of this year, they insist on reducing our compensation and benefits. At our outpatient lab, we would normally have 8 caregivers working, and now, even with COVID and the increase in demand in testing, we only have 4 that help cover our entire workload. Patient care is delayed. Our caregivers are struggling because management won't fill those shifts. Memorial went from being an elite hospital with strong values that everyone wanted to work at, a stepping stone with massive turnovers because caregivers aren't treated with dignity. And Providence is trying to trying to take away what little we have left. Experienced senior workers have no incentive to stay anymore because management is always trying to increase their profits at our expense. I wish management would honor our hospital core values the way we all honor our commitment to our patients. You can't just paint the words dignity, compassion, excellence, justice, and integrity on the walls and not expect us to hold you accountable to those values. We care for our community, and Providence needs you to care for us. Thank you so much for listening.
My name is Melissa Bosenko, and I've been a unit secretary and a care partner at Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital for more than 14 years. Understaffing has been a huge problem for a long time, and patient care has gone downhill drastically as a direct result. When I first started here, I could care for my patients on a compassionate and an emotional level. Now I just go from one urgent thing to the next with my phone ringing off the hook the whole time. The patients see that, they feel it, and it's not the kind of care that caregivers want to be able to give. I'm really thankful that we were able to utilize the National Guard to step in and provide patient care during the outbreak on my unit. Although we should have had enough caregivers on staff in the first place so that this wouldn't have been the case at all. Upper level management refuses to hear about our concerns. We desperately need more staff to care for our patients at the level that they really need. The way that we have to pick and choose which patient gets what care at what time is incredibly difficult, and we shouldn't have to because our patients deserve better than that. For an example, there was a story in the Press Democrat just this week where one of our own patients reported that we're understaffed and that they had to wait 30 to 45 minutes for something as simple as water. I can explain that. Let's just say I'm headed down the hall to get an EKG machine for a patient, and I get a call that another patient needs to be prepped for surgery right away. They're coming to get him. As I'm walking, a patient is waving at me and yelling that they really need to go to the bathroom. So unfortunately, a water refill can take quite some time. We're forced to prioritize our patient care in this way because we don't have enough caregivers to do it any differently. It also seems that we're constantly behind everyone else in every other hospital when it comes to implementing new safety procedures and guidelines. It took an outbreak of 26 caregivers from one unit to test positive for COVID for management to even put up partitions and dividers in our break rooms and to tell us that we need to wipe down our own surfaces before we use equipment. Providence needs to put patients before profits and prioritize the safety of our caregivers. I was really disappointed when management instantly placed blame on caregivers for the spread of COVID-19 at Memorial when it already existed in the hospital. It's highly contagious, and we all weren't provided with the appropriate PPE per Cal OSHA's ATD standards in the first place. Memorial is my home, and 5 of my siblings have worked here over the years. There are only 2 of us left. I'm still here because I have hope that things will change for the better. Thank you so much for hearing us.
Hi, my name is Carmen Avista, and I'm an EVS worker at Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital for 3.5 years. In the beginning, I was happy to be here and excited to come to work. Now I dread it like others do. We used to get our breaks. We got help when we needed it. No one from management was yelling at us, threatening us. Over time, we just stopped following the hospital's values and management. Here really is unethical. They use our core values of compassion, dignity, justice, excellence, and integrity as a double standard. They don't follow any of them, but they expect us to, and they use them as a weapon against us. Management doesn't respect us or value our opinions on the work that they had hired us to do. We have to depend on our coworkers because we can't depend on management. We've learned that we have to stand together and protect each other because management won't, especially now during COVID. I'm angry about how we're being treated and I'm scared for my coworkers. Our EVS supervisor tries to pit us against each other and targets coworkers he doesn't like. The EVS director has waited at our cars to confront us after our shifts when we're off the clock and even threatened our union rep at his car too. Several of us have witnessed the EVS manager make inappropriate comments and sexually harass caregivers. He also physically assaulted one caregiver and tried to hit another. Management is aware as we've reported all these things, but they still refuse to hold anyone accountable. We've contacted HR many times. We've filed grievances. We've submitted petitions signed by hundreds of caregivers demanding action to provide us with safe working environment, and we've marched on the CEO's office. Supervisor Shirley Zhang has called the CEO and written a letter on our behalf demanding action as well. Dozens of us have given witness statements to everyone from local HR reps to vice president of HR and even an investigator from outside the hospital. But she also works for Providence, and they all just hide the reports from us. There's no transparency or open communication, and we really can't trust the hospital to keep us safe. That's why we ask for this hearing today. Thank you.
¿Me escuchan? Hola, mi nombre es Lucía Mendoza. Trabajo para el departamento de EVS del Queen Valley Medical Center de Napa. Yo trabajo para el hospital desde hace 6 años. Tristemente, nuestro departamento cruza por una situación muy difícil y tóxica a causa de nuestros managers, Martín y Gordon. Martín es nuestro manager, es una persona injusta, no le gusta que nadie le opine ni le diga nada. Es una persona que no le gusta que lo desafíen. En mi caso, yo he tenido estrés porque he tratado de hacer mi trabajo, especialmente con los COVID rooms en estos momentos. Él no quiere que usemos el equipo apropiado para poder limpiar los cuartos. Nos da 2 áreas para limpiar cuando él sabe que podemos contagiar a otras personas. Él es una persona que dice palabras inapropiadas siempre para hacer un ambiente muy tóxico en el departamento de EVS y dividir a todos los trabajadores. Nos cambia los sketches sin avisarnos y sin decirnos y tomarnos en cuenta para nada. Por ejemplo, yo no puedo pedirle nada a mi supervisora cuando es todo de trabajo. No puedo utilizar ningún tipo de conversación ni comunicación con ella porque Martín y Gordon le tienen prohibido porque yo asisto a las reuniones que la unión nos permite para poder expresar lo que está pasando en nuestros departamentos. Soy una persona que pide justicia y respeto. El Hospital Queen Valley promueve justicia, respeto y compasión. Ninguna de esas el hospital nos brinda. Cada día cambian de ideas, cada día hay nuevas reglas y todos nuestros compañeros pedimos justicia para nuestro departamento y que se nos dé también el equipo que necesitamos para poder seguir trabajando y poder tener un ambiente apropiado. Hemos ido a recursos humanos muchas veces, tienen muchas quejas de muchos compañeros de todo lo que está pasando alrededor por culpa de Martín y Gordon y no hemos recibido respuesta y no nos escuchan y solo recibimos maltrato, lo que se llama acoso por ellos y nos dan más trabajo de lo que es para una sola persona.
Sorry. Hi, folks. So that was Lucia, one of our EVS workers, and my name's Larry, one of the staff organizers. I'm going to read her statement as it was translated to English as well for everyone attending today. Hello, my name is Lucia Mendoza. I work in the Environmental Services Department at Queen of the Valley Medical Center. I've worked at Queen since 2015. Our department has many problems. Most of all, our problems are caused by our manager, Martine, and director, Gordon. Martine is our manager at Queen of the Valley. He is an unfair manager that doesn't like it when we employees challenge him. To keep us divided, he starts rumors and tries to create all sorts of problems between us to keep us divided. He benefits from a climate of fear in this department. I'm full-time, but I float across areas. I like being afloat, but Martine takes advantage of this by frequently changing my work area without telling me before my next shift. If my area changes, that means my schedule may change and I might not arrive on time. I don't want to be late because that makes my coworkers work harder, but I have no way of knowing if Martine doesn't tell me about this. Gordon knows this and doesn't do anything to fix it. An example of this happened just a couple of weeks ago when I was working in the OB department. Martine had changed my area without telling me, so I arrived late, which made my coworkers upset. Then Gordon and Martine came to my work area as I was cleaning in OB and pulled me into a patient room and began yelling at me. They were yelling so loud that one of the department supervisors knocked on the door and asked them to quiet down because it was a patient care area. I was upset and crying. This is not what a positive work environment looks like. Our management is also vindictive. One day, we held a department-wide union meeting in the parking lot so we could socially distance. We worked together and came up with solutions to issues we were facing on the job. Martine watched us from the window of the hospital. When I came on shift, he assigned me extra work, the work normally done by 2 EVS employees. Management frequently does this, and the consequences in rooms are not cleaned. The consequences are that rooms are not cleaned properly. This is unsafe and unacceptable anytime, especially now with the pandemic. The Queen frequently talks about its values: compassion, respect, and justice. None of this is important to our department management. There is no respect, there is no compassion, there isn't even basic communication. We've gone to human resources to try to get these problems solved, and they'll tell us that they are going to fix things, but nothing changes. Our power is in our unity. My coworkers and I recognize this, and more we are standing up together for what is right. That is why I'm here representing my coworkers. What's going on in our department isn't right, and it must change. And for the folks that don't know, I'm Larry, one of the staff organizers. And what I'm going to attempt to do now is summarize a bit of what you've heard and add some important information. So my name's Larry Liguori. I'm one of the staff organizers and representatives for NUHW, working at Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital. I have the honor and the privilege of representing 750 caregivers that care for this community in every way imaginable. They work through tragedies, they work through everything without fail. They're always there when called upon, and they're treated in a deplorable fashion. That's why we're here today. So thank you to the panelists and thank you to everyone watching. and giving us this forum to be able to share what's happening. We have three primary urgent focuses that we're trying to talk about today, and that's what you're hearing. First is the toxic culture. It's pervasive throughout Providence, which is one important reason we have Lucia joining us. It's not just at Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital, but it is worse here. Workers endure a relentlessly hostile work environment imposed by a management team that tries to rule through intimidation, fear, and retaliation. Our member leaders, like several speaking here, are targeted and repeatedly attacked for asserting their rights and defending their coworkers. Caregivers report feeling, actual quotes, they report feeling the disdain and the hatred from their managers when they come to work. They're seen as the enemy, and there's no support whatsoever from human resources, who can be just as hostile at times. All work has dignity, or at least it should, and no one should have to endure these working conditions. One thing that you'll hear many times throughout this, even from folks that follow me, is Providence's core values, because they use them as a weapon. Dignity, justice, compassion, excellence, and integrity. How can any corporation claim these values when you refuse to demonstrate them yourself or foster them in others? These are not values that our workers experience. The only way our workers experience these values is amongst each other, because this is what we demonstrate to each other, and Providence needs to as well. The EVS director, second is the extremely hostile work environment and environmental services, which you've heard at now from Santa Rosa and from Queen of the Valley. Our EVS workers are subjected to the worst abuse we've ever seen, certainly the worst abuse I've ever seen in any of the industries that I've had the honor of representing workers in. We've proven on multiple occasions, daytime supervisor has a history of intimidation and pitting workers against each other. We've proven on multiple occasions that he's dishonest and has falsified evidence against our workers, especially workers who challenge him or defend themselves. Two former human resources managers and the former vice president of human resources have even apologized for his behavior, but he is still here and there has been no change or accountability. As Carmen mentioned, the EVS director has ambushed workers at their cars when they're off the clock to try and intimidate and harass them. He even approached me at my own vehicle and threatened me after emailing the CEO to report some of his poor conduct towards our members. Even after I filed a police report, a threat report with the Santa Rosa Police Department, and we provided video of the event, the hospital still took no action, and he still acts with impunity. There's no accountability. The EVS manager, who is extremely aggressive and known for hitting his own chest while he yells at people, physically assaulted one of our caregivers and punched boxes in a fit of rage. That caregiver was left bruised and filed an assault report with the Santa Rosa Police Department. The EVS manager in question admitted that it happened, but said it was an accident, so he was not held accountable. The human resources manager later responded to me in a text message saying, based on the facts collected, this doesn't warrant removing him from work. The behavior will be addressed. Since that time, the same EVS manager tried to physically hit another caregiver in a team meeting with numerous witnesses before he was restrained by another manager, and he has sexually harassed multiple female caregivers, all of which have been reported. We've held numerous actions, including sticker-ups and petitions calling for full and transparent investigations and accountability. The most recent petition was signed by a majority of the EVS department and more than 300 caregivers at the hospital. It was sent to the CEO of Providence and the CEO of the hospital. An investigation was conducted apparently, and those results are still being withheld from us. And there have been no changes in the management structure and no accountability. EVS workers marched on the CEO's office to deliver that petition, along with another letter from Supervisor Shirley Zane demanding action. And there's been no action to date, and the hospital refuses to share the results of any of their internal investigations with us. Finally, patient and caregiver safety must be addressed. Throughout this pandemic, Santa Rosa Memorial has refused to use its vast resources to protect the health of its workers or its patients. It has refused to test all workers for COVID-19 or even provide N95 masks for all workers treating patients who are COVID positive or suspected of being COVID positive, even after an outbreak that infected those 26 caregivers and several patients in one unit. The hospital failed to adequately perform contact tracing or inform workers of the outbreak in a timely manner. The outbreak has been traced to an event starting on August 6th, yet hospital management didn't choose to inform any of us until August 28th, the day it began widespread testing of some caregivers, not all. Providence needs to put patients before profits and prioritize worker safety. At our recent event this last week, Supervisor Hopkins stated, "If healthcare workers are heroes, why the hell are we still talking about N95 masks? We're still having the same conversation about the lack of basic healthcare worker protections that we had 6 months ago. What is wrong with this hospital?" Despite earning massive profits, the hospital has laid off workers, demanded takeaways at the bargaining table, and left the hospital understaffed and under-resourced. Just in August, during the height of this COVID outbreak, Memorial Hospital was so desperately understaffed that it had to call on the National Guard to provide nurses and nursing assistants. After our members held a 5-day strike in July to protest these proposed takeaways, to health benefits and sick leave accruals, the hospital retaliated by reducing its proposals. We're honored by the outpouring support from our allies, from our community partners, from our neighbors, and from our elected leaders in recent months on these issues. But we still feel the need to move forward because the hospital they just simply haven't acted. And now for the details. Santa Rosa Memorial has reported more than $200 million in operating profit over the last 3 years, with another $42.8 million in operating profit just in the first 6 months of this year. So to underscore that, at the time that they're claiming that they are suffering financial losses, they reported $42.8 million in the first 6 months of this year, which includes COVID. Providence has also received $509 million in federal stimulus funds, our dollars, and is currently sitting on an extraordinary $12.5 billion, billion with a B, $12.5 billion in cash reserves that they refuse to invest in their workforce or patient safety. No matter what management says, they can afford to provide the necessary PPE and staffing for a safe working environment, and they can certainly bargain a fair contract for the frontline caregivers with no takeaways. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you all. At this point, we are going to, normally at this point, we would have management give their report on their perception of the issues being raised here today. We did invite management to participate in this process. We have not yet heard back from them, so they will not be reporting today. If they choose to report later, we will include anything that they add to our final report. Based on where we are now, having heard from the testimony from the workers and from the representative of the union, the panelists are now going to go into a, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Now we're going to have some questions from the panelists who are going to each have a few moments to ask questions on anything they heard or anything they are aware of to get clarified before we look at some potential recommendations. I'd like to start by asking Victoria Fleming, the Vice Mayor of Santa Rosa, if she has any questions.
Thank you very much to you, Andy, and thank you to everybody who provided their testimony today. My experience and expertise is in clinical social work and community mental health, so I'm particularly interested in the effects of your workplace as you describe them on your mental health and your ability to provide patient care. I understand that mental health is a sensitive topic for many people, so I won't direct the question at anybody in particular, but invite any of the panelists to come forward and testify to how these actions have impacted your sleep, your relationships with other people, your social or occupational functioning, or if you have been compelled for any reason to seek mental health or services to address the hostility that you describe in your testimony.
Thank you. 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 Than
Oh, absolutely, Victoria. This is Melissa Bosenko. I'm a care partner on the med-surg department, and obviously we deal with the community. And I recently had, without giving any details, patient experience with a mentally unstable patient who I rushed in to help with a self-inflicted wound. I jumped on to hold pressure onto his bleeding wound to hold his blood into his body, you know. And it was very graphic. There was a lot of blood loss. He nearly died. Mm-hmm. And my coworkers came in to help, and our spiritual care chaplain heard about the situation. And they did a debriefing for us, you know, but my name wasn't involved in that initial debriefing. So she heard about it later through word of mouth. Somebody mentioned to her, oh, Melissa was there. She was the one that jumped on the patient. And so she asked me mid-shift, how you doing about that? And I said, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm good. Yeah, no worries. And I shook it off because that's what you do. You have to. You just continue on with your shift, because after that situation, I went into another patient room and dealt with them calmly and collectively. And it took me about 2 days. I woke up with a nightmare, and I was like ice water was dumped on me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. All these emotions and feelings. I was like, I'm not equipped. I can't handle this. Who am I? I'm not trained properly. You know, all of these things. And it took me a couple of days to realize, okay, you know, you have to deal with this stuff. You have to find a way. You can't brush it under the rug forever. So I have been doing this a long time, and I'm just now realizing that I have to look at these situations a little bit differently so that I can deal with them, so that I'm not 100% a robot for the rest of my patients, so that I can kind of deal with it, turn it on, turn it off, that kind of thing. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to speak to your question.
Great, thank you.
I went in for a checkup and my blood pressure was 160 over something. And I had to go on anti-anxiety meds a few months ago because we knew that it wasn't biologic, it wasn't metabolic in origin. It resulted in stress. I'm not the only one. And the thing is, what we do is already every day difficult to process. We see people on their worst day. And the way I describe the stress, how we deal with the stress, is like each of us has a bucket in our soul, and into that bucket we put the human suffering that we deal with. The guy who shot himself, the bicyclist who got hit by a car, the person who dies of a heart attack while his family can't even come back for the last 6 months. And most days the bucket is big enough. It's not big enough anymore. It's not big enough anymore because Providence has reserved a really big spot in the bucket. We know how to deal with fire. We know how to deal with disease. We know how to deal with having to work hard. But the way that they treat us is an unforced error. It's a choice that they're making. And so there's not only the trauma of how they treat us, there's the trauma that comes with knowing they treat us that way out of a complete disregard for our humanity.
Thank you for sharing that.
I have something. Hi guys, it's Taylor. I think the only thing I can think of that clearly represents, in my opinion, how Providence treats us and thinks of us as workers is about a month into the pandemic, and this didn't happen to me, it happened to a coworker, and I witnessed the event. We're about 3 weeks into the pandemic starting, and she's sitting up at the front desk, so she's the front line. We haven't implemented permanent temp takers or anything at the front door. She's wearing a mask to check somebody in. And our manager happened to walk in, and she says, well, what are you doing wearing a mask? And my coworker says, you know, I'm wearing the mask for my safety. You know, it's COVID is spread between, you know, the cough and all of that. And she says, no, you need to take off that mask because it gives the wrong impression to the public. We're worried about this. And it just kind of goes to show you that as long as the public image of St. Joseph is okay, every single one of us, including my 750 members of the union and all of the nurses, are completely and totally expendable as long as we don't damage the image of St. Joseph's and the image they are trying to protect within the community. And even more so now, we all feel completely and totally disposable to them, even more so than before. And, you know, we just had an outbreak, and yesterday I worked an 8-hour shift, and at no point during the 8 hours, I got there at 6 in the morning and left at 3:30 in the afternoon. And at no point during that almost 9-hour period was there anybody at the emergency room entrance taking temps and asking the appropriate questions for COVID. And unfortunately, that is not a thing that happens few and far between. I have reported it to the union repeatedly that they are commonly failing us to protect us, and yet they paint us as the bad guys in the media and make us the bad guys because we had this outbreak. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they have failed us repeatedly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'd like to ask Jenny Fish, Dr. Jenny Fish, family medicine physician, if she has any questions concerning the testimony.
First, I want to thank all of you for coming forward and sharing your testimony. I understand how hard that actually is, and I very much appreciate that. I'm glad that Victoria Fleming had actually asked about the chronic health tolls of dealing with a chronically toxic work environment and the effects that it has on both mental health and physical health. I would like to ask specifically about COVID and PPE. And I'd like to ask my first question to Carmen, if possible. We heard from Lucia about having to go into rooms and take care and clean rooms of COVID positive patients. As an EVS worker, and I just want to say that as a physician, I would never enter a room or attempt to clean a room without an N95, based on what I know and based on evidence-based science. So Carmen, are you provided an N95 or other protective gear when you clean the rooms of COVID positive patients or patients that are suspected to be positive?
No, we have some of it, like the gowns and certain things, but not for a N95. We have to ask the nurse, the lead nurse, for the N95s, and they either don't have any of the regular N95, or they give us attitude and say, no, we don't have any, and shoo us off like a fly. And on top of it, they, I know on a certain unit where they had isolations on every single room, they didn't have an isolation cart on every room. It was probably every 3 rooms, and I literally had to go down to my unit to go grab PPE in order to clean a room, and on top of it to change it out, and it takes forever. It's a lot of equipment to put on and to try and find just to clean a room.
And I imagine that the stress and pressure of that is even more when you're understaffed, and the time pressures are even more. Do you also find that you have to go into rooms of other patients after cleaning COVID positive rooms, or after going into rooms of patients that have suspected COVID?
Yeah, there is. I know that there's a designated area for the positive, and that coworker goes straight to another floor to go pull trash that isn't COVID positive. And so there's the possibility of giving it to not only the patients, but us coworkers as well. So it's horrible.
Yeah. And I can just imagine the toll that takes on you every day. Because of the budget and because of the profits that the hospital has, we know that they have enough PPE to actually supply you. So I can only imagine how hard that is to work under those conditions. I know other panelists have other questions. And so I'm going to go ahead and give the rest of my time to the other panelists. Thank you.
Could I, if allowable, could I add a detail about PPE?
Very quickly, Larry, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it brief. I prefer to leave the space for the workers, but some couldn't be here today or they're in the other room. Two quick issues I wanted to underscore is culturally, this goes back to part of the complaints that you hear is the lack of dignity and compassion for the workers. When this pandemic started, we literally had workers from different units saying that the chief nursing officer was going up to workers and saying, take that mask off. What kind of message are you sending to our patients? Simply because our workers weren't sure. We all had a lack of information and they wanted to be safe. And a mask is about protecting the other person. We know that. But now they were threatened with the discipline then, and now things have reversed. And then second, an issue of importance for many of our members is a discriminatory practice in how N95s and certain PPE are given out. And I can just summarize it in one example for you. In the OR, and this is not the surgeons or anesthesiologists' fault because they get them, they're very supportive of our members. But surgeons and anesthesiologists receive N95s as a practice for every procedure. Our technicians, anesthesia tech and surgical techs that are in the rooms don't. So the message that sends is that your life and your safety are not worth an N95 mask. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. Esther Lemus, the Vice Mayor of Town of Windsor, do you have some questions?
Hi, thank you. So, hello, my name is Esther Lemus. I'm the Vice Mayor for the Town of Windsor. I'm also an attorney here in Sonoma County. I want to start by just acknowledging the courage that all of the witnesses / employees have displayed today just by coming forward and speaking publicly. I know that it's not easy, especially with concerns regarding workplace retaliation. So I just really want to acknowledge your courage in being here today and speaking honestly, truthfully to these very important issues. So I want to start by asking a follow-up question for Carmen Amavisca. And Carmen, in your written testimony and actually in your testimony today, you mentioned that people have witnessed the EVS manager sexually harass caregivers. Can you please describe what you have witnessed with respect to sexual harassment?
Yeah, actually, he mentioned it to me when we'd be like in passing when he first started, and we'd be walking by to like a certain floor, and a caregiver would walk by, and he would rubberneck her while she passed by us and be looking at her bottom area and be like, ooh, 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 I wish I could. There's too many beautiful women here, too many. And I remember looking at him in disgust, like, that's my coworker, like that's my family. Like, I care for those women like they're my family. And it disgusted me that he even said that in my presence.
Have there been other examples that you have observed?
He just constantly, there's a time where we were cleaning, permanently cleaning an area, and so me and my other coworker were talking about her mom and stuff, and she had showed him a picture like, oh, this is my mom, I care for her, I love her very much. And he actually was like, well, let me hook me up with her number, let me get at her. And she's very attractive and good looking. I want some of that. And it's very inappropriate to say that to a coworker about her mom. And she is predominantly Spanish speaking, so I don't think that she quite understood what he was insinuating to her about her mom.
Thank you. You also mentioned that that same supervisor has physically assaulted a caregiver and tried to hit another. Were you present when these situations happened?
I was present during one of them, and the other one is actually my best friend in real life, where he had thrown a phone and it hit him in his chest so hard that it bruised his chest, and he turned around and started punching the supply boxes because he was angry. And another time of where we were having our daily huddles, and they were reading off a message from the CEO, and I had interrupted and told him the facts about it, and he turned, and my coworker was like, "This is intimidation, you can't do that." And he just snapped right around to him, got in his face so very closely, and was just pointing in his face, yelling at him, saying, "I'm not intimidating anybody. I'm not intimidating anybody. No one's intimidating anybody." And it was so bad that the other supervisor had to pull his arm a few times and was like, "Hey, calm down, relax." And he did like an arm movement of like, "Get off me." And he continued to yell and belittle my coworker. And it's very traumatizing and very mentally exhausting on this. It's horrible to be working right now with these people.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to ask just one last question. I want to make sure to leave enough time for some of the other panelists. This question is for Larry. Larry, what has management's response been to these incidents?
Thanks for asking. In response to the physical violence and the intimidation, we've run the gambit on every tool that we have at our disposal. We've called the police, we've staged actions, we've done petitions, I mean, up into the hundreds of caregivers signing it. The only official response that we've gotten from 3 successive HR directors now is that they conduct a thorough and fair investigation, that their findings are always inconclusive, and that they've taken the appropriate action, and the word that we're all sick of hearing is addressed. Everything is addressed. Bad behavior is addressed, violence is addressed, systemic racism and abuse is addressed, but it's clearly never addressed. In regards to, the most recent one, a physical assault, with the incident that Carmen was just discussing, that gentleman, the one caregiver who was struck and bruised, has actually been hospitalized at Memorial. So in doing his duties in EVS, and has had such severe blood pressure and cardiac responses that he's either walked over to the ER or taken to the ER, transported to the ER to receive emergency medical care while in the scope of his duties. And these are issues that he did not have when he started at Santa Rosa Memorial. These are issues that have developed because of the hostile environment. But the only official response that we've ever received is that an investigation has been conducted. For the first 2 investigations, we were promised that the report would be shared with us and that there would be transparency. And I can only imagine that the report was so appalling to them that they then changed their mind and they refused to share it with us. But there's never been official action.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
We have 2 more speakers, and we have about 4 minutes each for each of the speakers for their questions and the responses. So these are fascinating, and I wish we had more time. Nancy Dobbs is a retired media executive and health policy consultant. Nancy. You're on mute.
Thank you, Andy. And I echo Esther's comments to thank you all very much for being brave enough and determined enough to share, which obviously a very painful situation. Larry and Taylor mentioned the comment, the attitude about wearing masks and PPE gives a bad look to the public. And I've heard that, I would tell you, I've heard that from a number of nurses too, that they've experienced that attitude that it's more important to keep the good look of Memorial in the forefront than it is to protect you all. Really a telling and awful commentary. I wanted to ask Melissa, you mentioned, and I saw also that comment in the newspaper of one of the patients who's currently being quarantined at Memorial, saying he had to wait 35 minutes for a cup of water. And I really appreciated your describing what it felt like when you're expected to do so many jobs because you're so short-staffed. I wonder if you could just actually repeat that, what you were saying about what it felt like when one patient was asking for this and one patient was asking for that, and you were constantly having to make choices about who you were supposed to take care of. Melissa, if you could do that, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm not understanding what more exactly you mean. Just the way that we're headed in so many different directions at the same time. We're currently taking care of 18 quarantined patients, and we're not provided with N95s for the quarantined patients. We're wearing a simple surgical mask. And so every time you go into one patient room, you don your PPE and you bring in your equipment and you go to the patient to do care and you use the equipment on the patient. You then have to take everything off, clean your equipment, wait the proper chemical wait time in between so that the equipment is safe to use on somebody else, and then go on to the next. And sometimes there's one care partner for 18 patients just in that quarantine section. And so the feeling of not being able to go and help somebody when they need it is absolutely awful. Somebody needs to go to the bathroom. How long can you expect somebody to wait to go to the bathroom when they have medical equipment that they need help with, a leg brace or something like that, so that they're safe to even walk to the bathroom? And you do wear a phone, so your phone is ringing, and there's constantly somebody calling you, telling you what somebody else needs. It is awful, and the patients feel awful about it. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm almost done. I know they're calling for you. You know, I'm almost done. You can go on to the next. You can just leave me here. I'll be fine. And you know that they won't be fine alone.
Yeah, I'm sure that burden of wanting to care for the patients and the burden of not being able to do it in the fashion that you're trained to and that you're dedicated to doing must be a heavy burden. And I know Taylor mentioned that the lab coverage there used to be 8 staff and now there are 4. And I think Tammy also mentioned that that one evening all the techs were in surgery and there were no techs available in the emergency room. I think these things that you guys are reporting to us are unconscionable.
I would agree. Thank you. I was just speaking to Tyler yesterday and he said, how are you doing? How's everything going? And I said, it is awful. And I told him why. I told him that the PPE and regarding the quarantine, I said, we need more care partners. And he said, how many are on the floor right now? And I said, there's 3 for 33 patients, but we're short a unit secretary. And he said, well, I mean, that's about 11 a piece. And I have to tell you, that sounds about standard to me. And I had tried to explain, this isn't standard though. We don't have enough equipment to use on each patient. He said, okay, so I'm hearing you say that you could be helped by having more equipment. And I said, that's one of the things that could help. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, appreciate very much your sharing what you all are having to put up with.
Thank you, Nancy, and the caregivers. Reverend Lindsay Belker of the Christchurch United Methodist, you have some questions for any of the people who have testified today?
Yeah, I have a sort of more in-depth look at something I think I heard from T. but I'm going to open this question up to anyone who wants to respond. So I think, Tammy, in your testimony, I heard you say, I would never treat my patients the way Providence treats me. And I don't want that to slip by without offering an additional question, which is why? Why wouldn't you treat your patients the way Providence treats you? And that question can be for anyone else on the panel as well.
I try to come from a place of love with my patients. I don't expect love from my employer, but I expect respect. And I feel terribly disrespected by my employer. I also feel we are told to describe procedures to patients. And I take pride in my ability to tell patients, this is what we're going to do. This is how long it's going to take. Do you have any questions? When I have to pick up a newspaper to find out that we're providing room and board to people who were exposed to COVID within the walls of the hospital, I came to work on Labor Day. This is quite recent. And first thing in the morning, we were sitting there happy, you know, that was a good crew. We'd all signed up and chosen shifts on the holiday. And we were saying, oh, it's going to be a good shift. And the nursing supervisor came in raising her voice and saying, I need to know who said that transporters can't pick up patients from this floor. And I'm like, good morning. I have no idea what you're talking about. And what had happened is they had a cohort of patients who had been exposed during the outbreak, had tested negative, but were being kept quarantined. And they had moved them in the middle of the night. And a transporter thought that they needed to follow the COVID transport requirements. And I found that out several hours later because the nursing supervisor did not stop yelling long enough to actually give me the information I was seeking. I got a call later from the floor that those patients had been moved to, and a nurse said, I don't think we're supposed to let your transporters take our patients. And so everyone had that understanding, and the one person who was tasked with explaining how things really worked chose to be angry instead of being productive, and told me that I should be getting that information from my manager. Well, it happened at midnight, the last night of a 3-day weekend, and my manager had no idea. They hadn't told her either. If I had a nickel for every time my manager said, I didn't know that, I hadn't heard that, they don't communicate things that are fundamental importance for protecting our safety.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tammy. What I was sort of hearing is you talking about how you treat your patients with respect. So I want to kind of open that up to the others on the panel. The why, it could be a really simple answer, but why is it that it's important for you to treat your patients with dignity and respect?
Can I answer to that?
Please.
This is Taylor again. You know, it's like Tammy said earlier, we see people at their worst. Mm-hmm. They come in, and I work in the emergency room. I do registration. I see people after traumas, after accidents. You know, they don't want to be there. So if I can explain what we're doing to them, give them, you know, the information they need, and then I always try to leave with like a positive note when I see people. You know, when it's like, if you're checking out and I'm doing your registration, it's like, you know, I say this in the nicest possible way. You're a lovely, lovely human being, but I hope I never see you again. Mm-hmm. You know, it's treating people with a little bit of humility. It's trying to put yourself in their situation and understand that nobody wants to come into the emergency room. Nobody wants to be in the hospital. Everybody wants to be out living their lives as best they possibly can. And in light of the fact that we are here, we are showing up and doing this job, I want people to come in, get the care that they need, and never have to come back and need us again. And I think part of that is giving them the information they need, where they can, you don't have a primary care doctor? Let me give you a list of clinics in the area that can take care of you. So you don't have to come back and see us for your basic medical needs. Let's make sure we have the information of, I know you had a COVID test. Let me get a correct phone number for you so we can follow up with you tomorrow and make sure that you're negative. And it's like another failure of the hospital. All those patients that were tested and that were on the unit that had the breakout, we started on Friday having patients coming in to the emergency room stating, I got a letter from the hospital stating I was possibly exposed to COVID and I need to come back in and have another test done. And I spent 45 minutes of my day emailing out and checking around to various, is he supposed to come back to the ER? Does he need to pay for this? Or is this something that he can do as an outpatient that we're providing because he got exposed while he was in our care? And apparently they sent out this letter.
Yeah, I think, Taylor, I think we got you muted.
I'd
Sorry.
like to just say one more thing.
Sorry.
That I think all of us are called to do what we do. This is more than just, I want to go work in a hospital because it pays well. There is a calling involved in looking into the eyes of someone. I've had deeply moving sacred moments with people who are in great suffering. Not everyone is cut out for having those moments. And for us to get to the point where we're saying, I can no longer help anymore, I just don't have it in me, I cannot emphasize how hard that is for me. I love my colleagues, I love my patients, and I love what I do. But I've been doing it in spite of my employer for several years now.
So just
and to expand on that, this is Melissa. I'm sorry?
Melissa. No, go ahead, Melissa.
As a caregiver, when you want to care for somebody in their time of need, you know, they maybe have never experienced having to accept bathroom help from somebody. You need to take time and let that person know that it's okay. You're there for them. You're there to help them. It takes a little bit of time. It takes compassion. Nobody wants a robot to come in there and do that and act as though it's an emergency and you're going to get done as quick as possible because you have 9 other things waiting on you. Nobody wants that. And people deserve better care than that. They just do.
Yeah. So
does anyone need me to finish up anything I said? Are we good?
Go ahead, Taylor. If you just want to wrap up your last thought, then I think we can, because you were ending and I want to make sure we didn't miss something.
I was just saying, you know, it's these moments where the hospital fails to let us know what the plan is so that we can then best inform our patients.
Yeah.
You know, we had all these patients come in on Wednesday and Thursday stating, I got a letter from, I need to have another COVID test. Where do I go? And then I spend all this time trying to figure out where this patient needs to go so they don't have to pay for another emergency room visit when it could be a simple outpatient procedure.
That's right.
So it follows through with, we're doing our very best every single day to take care of these people because this is what we were meant to do. This is what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And the lack of information and the lack of trickle down from the top down to where we are, the people that are sitting on the front line, is failing us.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Taylor. It almost sounds like you're talking about your work of doing justice or trying to do work with excellence, integrity, and compassion. I'd also, you know, lift up that theme that I'm hearing from all of you around dignity, right?
Yes.
I mean, this idea of, someone mentioned the spiritual component, right? And these value statements, dignity because of what is called Imago Dei, that people are made in the image of God. What each of you are talking about is that deep respect and connection that comes with our shared humanity, right? So you're talking about Imago Dei, made in the image of God, rather than Imago Christus, which is made in the prophet. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you also for doing such an apt job of describing what ministry is and vocation, right? Calling and serving other people. I'm grateful for your work on this and for what you've shared with us. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I wish we had more time. Far be it from me to want to cut off interesting questions about these things of great import, but unfortunately, we have to move on now to our next phase, which will be the panelists will be deliberating for a very short time. We already have some ideas of what we want to say, but we want to have a chance to discuss. So we will be back shortly, and I'm going to turn this over to Mara at this point, I believe. So we'll be back.
Great, thank you so much, Andy and the panel for that, and thank you for the workers. I hope that all of you listening are just as horrified as we are, and we were from hearing that and hearing the working conditions that are happening in this hospital. We are so fortunate today. What you heard from a few different speakers and the workers today was the support that folks this year have been receiving from our 3rd District Supervisor, Shirley Zane. And so Shirley is here today to speak a little bit about this. And thank you so much, Shirley, for being here. Our 3rd District Supervisor, I'll turn it over.
Yeah, thank you, Mara. It's, you know, these stories kind of make your skin crawl as I'm listening. And I said to Larry the other day, and if you guys haven't clicked on the KRCB video, you should, because you have basically Supervisor Hopkins and myself yelling to Tyler, we just want to talk to you. We just want to talk to you. And he's literally turning his back to us, and the security guards are threatening to call the police on us. And we're saying, hey, we're your county 2 out of the 5 supervisors that signed your contract. Well, I asked Larry, of course, that's the day that RBG lies in state. Fighting for women's equity. And at the same time, I asked Larry, how many women in NUHW? And he said, about 75%. Some more of the lowest paid workers in the whole hospital, and yet the most essential workers, in my opinion. You can't have a hospital without clean rooms. I think this should be not just a workers' issue, but you should make this an issue of sexism. Because we know that the Catholic Church for a long time has been very, very sexist and patriarchal. And for a male CEO of a Catholic organization to turn his back on 2 women electeds, how dare he, really? And then he made some snide comment like we're gonna educate them or something later like that. And literally to have threatened to call the police on us if we didn't get off the property. Amazing. So Linda and I are gonna look at the contract. We're gonna look at it very carefully. And I would add, could you imagine him turning his back if it was James Gore and Supervisor Rabbit standing there saying, we just want to talk to you? I honestly, I can't. So we need to make this also an issue of sexism, especially since we are talking these days about the wonderful things that RBG did for women in terms of equity in the workplace. We should slam them on that. But also, as the Reverend talked about, these are issues of righteousness and holiness. And so when I talked to the workers the other day, I mentioned Amos 5:24, which is without a doubt probably one of my favorite verses. And Amos 5:24 simply says, let justice roll down like water and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. I think you should make stickers, Amos 5:24, put them on all 700 of your workers and walk around the hospital. I think you should get in his face and get in this organization's face that call themselves a Christian organization, yet do not treat their workers with respect and dignity, and clearly are sexist. They're sexist. And, you know, it's the Catholic Church. Don't even get me going on that. But I just want you to know that we're there for you, and we're gonna keep fighting, and we're gonna go look at that contract and see what it says about taking care of the workers. Because I know for a fact that when somebody with insurance gets sent to the trauma center, they basically, they will charge the insurance up to 10 times as much as whatever the procedure was. I had a friend who fell off her bike and she broke her arm. She was taken there. She was a Kaiser patient. When she saw the bill, she was like, what? And I said, well, they're charging you 10 times as much. And they're charging your insurance because they can get away with it. $60,000 for a broken arm. That's it. So I'm just here to let you know that your electeds are behind you. We support you 120%. I think we should be tough and do what people do when they face bullies. And there's only one way to face a bully, and that's not to reason. That's not to love them with kindness. That's go toe to toe. Let's go toe to toe with them and keep fighting for the workers' rights. Meanwhile, Linda and I will do the good fight. By the way, after that episode, and you've got to listen to it because it's really outrageous. I was joking with my friend who works at Sutter, which by the way has had 0 outbreaks among employees. I was joking that, you know, it's good that you didn't have to bail Linda and I out of jail, although we were really hoping we might get arrested the other day. But anyway, we're here for you. Amos 5:24. The fact that they treat their healthcare workers with such disrespect and violate every single one of their values, and this essential verse in terms of what it means to be a Christian. Go get them. Thanks.
Shirley, this is Taylor again.
So much.
Sure.
Can I add something real quick to Shirley's statement?
Yeah.
Just from working, well, first of all and foremost, I want to say thank you for showing up for us. You have come through for us on the strike line and your letters, and just know that it is greatly, greatly appreciated. And we really, really value your support and continue to hopefully work with you in whatever happens next, because I know you're going to do some amazing, amazing things.
Thank you.
I would like to just say, when we call a trauma in the emergency room, for us to call that trauma, for all of us to be sitting in that room waiting for somebody to show up, it's about $45,000, and we haven't even touched the patient. And if we call a code trauma, it's about $100,000, and that doesn't even include the scans or anything else that is done, x-rays, CAT scans, blood work. So we're talking big, big money just for us to show up in the room. So it goes to show you, your friend walked away with a broken arm and a $60,000 bill. She came out cheap considering what a trauma is.
Yeah, well, that was actually 10 years ago. And, you know, they've given me several tours. I worked with Todd and really liked Todd. This guy, Tyler, when I called him and said, you can't be cutting your workers' pay right after all these PG&E shutdowns because you guys were striking down in Petaluma Valley. And I said, the people who work there at Petaluma Valley, I said, they live in my district and they're not going to be able to pay their rent if you cut their pay for a week. And he said, well, we don't have any choice. And I said, you always have a choice. You always have a choice. I said, yeah, right. Okay. So anyway, I just think he's not a good guy, and hopefully we can help him be a better person. And I really think you've got to make this a woman's issue also, because if you've got 75% of your union workers there that are women, and he is a male CEO of a very patriarchal organization is treating you that way, well, guess what? Women are a protected class.
So Shirley, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that we do not staff well enough to always have a tech available to respond to a trauma from X-ray.
Right.
And one other thought, and that is that if they take over Petaluma and Healdsburg,
I know, it's terrifying.
I'm terrified.
Well, that's why it's a really good political opportunity to go after them really hard right now, because in terms of what's happening at the Supreme Court justice and women's rights, in terms of reproductive rights, I'm really scared that this organization, which is, by the way, based in Washington, as you know, is trying to take over our healthcare system. So we're going to go into the contract. We're going to go into the weeds. I was just starting to open it when you called me up, but believe me, we're going to go over it with a fine-tooth comb.
Great, thank you so much, Supervisor Zane. Again, it's just meant so much to workers to make sure that we have elected officials who are willing to take the stand that you have taken. Folks, today, the workers talked about how you have been calling on the CEO this year, and it was great to see you at the press conference this past Wednesday. So thank you again for being here. You are the exact model of what our elected officials should be doing, especially now in the middle of a pandemic, to stand for our essential workers and the workers we call heroes. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, and go get them. I'm here for you anytime you need me.
Great. We're also really honored. Our next speaker, while we wait for the panel to get back with their preliminary recommendations, is the president of the National Union of Healthcare Workers, who has stepped out of their annual leadership conference today to join us and give us a message. So Sal Roselli, President Sal Roselli, thank you so much for being here. I will hand it over to you to say a few words today.
Thanks, Mara, and appreciate Jobs with Justice and the focus and energy you're putting into helping us at Santa Rosa Memorial, and also ditto on your comments about Supervisor Shirley Zane, you know, a leader that we so appreciate, that we've been working with for many years. And Shirley, so appreciate you standing with our workers there. You know, it's all gloom and doom news right now. And I came out of our conference themed Fight of Our Lives, but I began it with a celebration of some very good news. And that is yesterday, Gavin Newsom signed Senate Bill 855, which guarantees access to timely mental health and substance abuse disorder, making California in the forefront of taking a step to achieve parity for mental health care. And many of our workers at Santa Rosa Memorial and Supervisor Shirley Zane had been fighting for 10 years to accomplish this. So just wanted to recognize that, because it's important to, note some victories. I wanted to quickly give you context, some bigger picture context to this fight and who Providence St. Joseph is. 7 months ago when this nightmare came upon us, it was clear that no employer, no hospital employer, for-profit, nonprofit, district hospitals like Petaluma Valley was ready for this pandemic. And it's because how the healthcare industry has evolved over the last 20 years, becoming corporatized to a point of just-in-time inventory to deal with normal circumstances, just-in-time staffing, just-in-time PPE. So no system was ready for this pandemic. We quickly refocused our energy to focus on keeping our members safe and established a patient bill of rights and worker bill of rights that's needed to protect healthcare workers and patients, and started really focusing on learning how folks were at risk, and challenged every one of our employers to put bargaining aside, establish some fast contracts, with simply a wage increase and no takeaways, so we could focus on the pandemic together in collaboration. St. Joseph's, Providence of St. Joseph's is the worst offender, and the extreme in terms of not wanting to work with their employees to focus, on this horrible crisis. In May, California promulgated testing regulations for nursing homes, forcing them to test both the residents and all the workers on a regular basis, and they're working. And California did it back then because almost half the deaths were happening in California's nursing homes. And today we have homes with no COVID in them, right? Because of those regulations. Last month, we talked to Gavin Newsom about doing it in California's hospitals, right? And next week, by the way, the Department of Health is going to come out with findings based on the work we've been doing. And, hopefully It's some positive news. But over the last several weeks, I've talked to scores of elected leaders in Sacramento and members of the press who are just taken aback by the fact that, while as you all know, professional sports right now, for them to be working, they're tested every other day. And now our college students are tested weekly to reopen the colleges. But healthcare workers that are caring for COVID patients can't get tested at all. And elected leaders are taken aback. You know, they initially find it hard to believe. And what I end up doing is giving them examples of the worst offenders, the extreme in the state. That's the for-profit Tenet Corporation and Providence St. Joseph's. And I give them examples like at Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital, you know, we have a member, a phlebotomist, who has symptoms and cannot be tested, has COVID symptoms, and they refuse to test her. Our union, our stewards had to work with her and her physician to get her admitted to the emergency room of her hospital to get tested, right? She was tested positive, right? And by the way, they said they're going to send her a bill for it. That's Providence St. Joseph's, where it's not unusual for our EVS workers that clean the hospital to need to clean a room with a COVID patient without proper PPE, and to herself get sick and then infect her family, her kids, and her spouse with COVID. These are real examples that are happening in the industry. You know, again, the Providence St. Joseph system is the extreme violator of 40+ employers that we deal with every day in terms of not keeping their workers or their patients safe. And this is at a time where they not only have a huge cash reserve and this hospital makes huge profits for the system, but they're also realizing hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government in relief at the same time. You know, we represent workers at 4 other Providence St. Joseph hospitals, you know, in Humboldt and in Napa and Los Angeles County. It's throughout the whole system that is absolutely focused on the bottom line, not keeping workers and patients safe. You know, it's a terrible thing, but there is unnecessary infections, unnecessary pain and suffering going on, and all based on profits, you know, being the primary motivator, the primary ideology of this system. You know, we had a strike there, right? The biggest strike during this hospital worker strike during this pandemic. And, you know, it's a last resort. And it's because, again, they stand alone in giving our members a final offer of demanding that people pay more for their health care for them and their kids during this pandemic. And the final offer is that their paid sick time be reduced, taking it out of their banks during this pandemic. No other employer in this state has given us kind of a proposal. So, you know, Jobs with Justice, Shirley, other leaders that are standing with us, so much appreciated. You know, the workers are committed to make the hospital safe for their patients and their coworkers and their families. And, you know, we just so appreciate you standing with us. Thank you. Thank you.
President Roselli, thank you so much for speaking. And, you know, I think obviously a big takeaway is that not only has this been an egregious fight for these workers and a totally unnecessary one in the middle of a pandemic where our healthcare workers should be prioritized in terms of their health and safety right now, but I think that there's also a bigger message here that this is not singular to Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital. This is a systemic problem with the corporatization of healthcare and this employer, Providence, who, as both Supervisor Zane and President Roselli have mentioned, is not just doing this to the workers here, but is systematically rolling out these attacks on workers, the attacks on organized labor, and and doing it in a way to ensure that they can keep their profits all across where they're located. So Washington, Oregon, California, and elsewhere. And meanwhile, you know, as you've heard, they're raking in billions in profits and paying their CEO millions. So this just is totally unacceptable. And we ask that you all continue to pay attention to the Providence system, continue to watch where they're buying up hospitals and hold them accountable. If you haven't had a chance, please make sure that you make a phone call or send an email. Let the CEO know this is completely unacceptable and you will not stand for as a community. All right, our panel is back with their preliminary recommendations. I know we're a little over time, but thank you all for staying with us. I'm going to turn it over to Co-Chair Andy Merrifield to read the preliminary recommendations for this employer, and then we will have final thoughts from the panelists before we end today. Andy?
Thank you. This will be, hopefully it will be coherent. We had some of this done, but we have a lot of really good ideas that came out of the long-term, all of the testimony and all the material that came from the various caregivers. So what I'm going to do is we have 4 recommendations, and they line up, maybe not in chronological order, but they line up with the same material in maybe a slightly different format. Our first recommendation deals with inadequate staffing. We note that inadequate staffing is not solely because of the pandemic. Inadequate staffing goes back years. So our recommendation is to start with short staffing puts patients at risk. The hospital should have a consistent and transparent staffing policies in place. They should be enforced and never used to punish or retaliate against employees. The forced overtime should be rare and not a policy for saving money on payroll or benefits. While COVID-19 has presented extraordinary challenges, utilizing taxpayer fund backup staffing for the National Guard, et cetera, is not a solution by managers to properly plan for staffing, as this staffing problem went way before the pandemic. Plus, we want to note that replacing trained professionals with the National Guard will harm patient care. Given that Providence has seen great financial success in recent years, reporting 12% operating profit versus the statewide average of about 1%, it would seem that Providence is financially capable of maintaining staffing levels that ensure workers' safety and better patient care. The Workers' Right Board calls on Providence to negotiate in good faith with the workers through the National United Healthcare Workers to resolve staffing issues, and strongly suggest that Providence and the entire management team revisit their core values as they reconsider their staffing and scheduling policies. Our second finding deals with insufficient protection for staffing during COVID-19. Our recommendations on this are: Providence needs to put worker safety before profits. It must become the highest priority. It should never have taken an outbreak to respond aggressively, and it should never have to happen again. The board strongly urges Providence to immediately meet all 6 of the demands of the caregivers as presented to the hospital. They are as follows: provide N95s to all caregivers who are in the same room as a person suspected of having COVID-19 or a confined COVID-19 patient in accordance with Cal OSHA's Airborne Transmissible Disease Standard, ATD. Number 2, immediately test all caregivers who have been exposed. Pardon me. I'm looking for page 2 here, folks, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, have been exposed to COVID-19 or show symptoms and provide paid leave for all caregivers who must self-quarantine. Number 3, provide free, regularly scheduled COVID-19 testing to all caregivers, not only in response to an outbreak. Number 4, enable comprehensive contact tracing by implementing room entry and transport logs for all patients who have a COVID-19 or are suspected of having it. Promptly notify any exposed caregiver. Number 5, treat all admitted patients as potentially having COVID-19 until they test negative. Number 6, provide consistent and timely communications from hospital administration, caregiver health and infection prevention regarding safety protocols to ensure transparency to all caregivers. Okay. Our next recommendation concerning the general atmosphere of disrespect, intimidation, opacity, retaliation, and violence. As I said, we did this on the fly, and now I am looking for that page. So please bear with me. I apologize to all of you. Recommendation number 3 on the finding of general atmosphere. Any verified physical assaults or threats of violence should lead to dismissal and should be reported to the police. These are unlawful and cannot be excused. The board strongly recommends that Providence re-examine its commitment to its own stated core values of compassion, dignity, justice, and integrity. None of these values is exemplified by the treatment of caregivers that have been reported. There's no dignity in a manager yelling at an employee. There is no integrity in a corporation that does not respect and properly respond to the grievance procedures and to make honest attempts to remedy problems in a timely manner. We also recommend a commitment to a more open communication and transparency between management and staff. Never again should there be 3-week passage between the appearance of a dangerous threat, such as a COVID outbreak, and the notification to the staff and the community as appropriate. The board also strongly recommends returning to the bargaining table immediately with the workers and representatives of the National Union of Healthcare Workers and to return to good faith bargaining. These workers have endured fires, floods, evacuations, and now a pandemic. They show up for work in spite of the challenges they face, challenges that threaten their very lives. It is not too much to ask of that they do not endure a corporate culture that fails to respect their work and value what they bring to the job every day. It has been more than a year. It's time to negotiate immediately to finalize a contract. And finally, our 4th finding has to do with sexual harassment. Reports of sexual harassment and abuse have outraged the board. Any manager who has sexually harassed or created a hostile work environment should be dismissed. Willful ignorance is no longer an excuse in the workplace for allowing this kind of behavior to continue. Dismissal not only removes toxic managers, but signals that hospitals care about their employees' safety and their work environment. The Workers' Right Board strongly urges Providence to purge its management's ranks immediately of anyone who engages in these actions, to institute a new culture that takes such reports seriously, investigates them thoroughly and promptly, and takes appropriate action, including reporting such incidences to police or other appropriate authorities. Physical and sexual abuse are unlawful, and those who knowingly allow that behavior to continue are operating outside the law themselves. It is time for Providence to live up to its own values of compassion, dignity, justice, excellence, and integrity. Those are our preliminary recommendations based on the material to date. And so our next step is to look at any final thoughts by our panelists. And I want to join Myra in thanking all of you who stuck with us. We are running a little long, but this is very, very serious stuff. So our next step is to listen to finishing remarks from our panelists on our day to date, if we could. So if we, towards that end, I'd like to start by calling once again on Victoria Fleming. If you have a few quick remarks about this, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, I just want to once again echo the sentiments that Andy just relayed regarding our findings, and state that we are, as a panel, we were outraged, and I am saddened to hear the reports of hostile workplace and substandard patient care, as well as a mismatch between the values espoused by Providence St. Joe's and the values as they are not carried out. I believe that there is a solution, and that it is not impossible to get to a better place, and that I highly urge Providence St. Joe's and the workers and NUHW to rejoin at the bargaining table in good faith at the very earliest time possible, so that both the workers, the patients, and the hospital staff all around can experience the highest levels of safety and care that can be afforded. And so to that end, I will keep it brief and just say in closing that it was incredibly brave of the workers to come out and share their testimony, and it's not lost on me that this puts you in even greater risk. So my deepest gratitude goes out to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Jenny Fish.
As someone who literally still works in hospitals, I understand the hierarchies, the gaslighting, the power structures that each of you had been fighting against. Like Victoria, I commend and appreciate your bravery to come forward and to share your testimonies and to stand up for what's right. You care for your work, you care for your colleagues. It's obvious that you care for the patients. And I know that patient safety absolutely depends on adequate staffing and worker safety. Worker safety is patient safety. So patients' rights are workers' rights, are human rights. We cannot provide excellent and compassionate and safe patient care without caring for our healthcare workers. For Providence St. Joe's to choose staffing, COVID, HR policies that clearly put workers at risk, it is dangerous, it is negligent. And choosing profits over worker and patient safety is unacceptable, unethical, and frankly, malpractice. It violates our sacred oath to provide healthcare to our community. Thank you for the work that you're doing, for bringing this to light, and we will continue to stand with you during this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Esther Lemus, please, any finishing thoughts? You're mute.
Am I muted now? I am, okay. Sure. So I want to start by thanking the employees and again, acknowledging your courage in speaking up today. I understand the challenges that come along with that, but I really appreciate you having the courage to step up, to speak up for yourselves and in support of your coworkers on the issues of workplace safety and dignity. As employees during the pandemic, it is not lost on me that you are putting your lives at risk every single time you step into that hospital during this time. Your employer needs to not only treat you with the respect that you deserve, but they also need to protect you and your health and that of your families. You are its greatest asset. It is beyond concerning to hear the lack of precautions that your employer is taking during this pandemic, including not providing N95 and personal protective equipment to all workers treating patients who are COVID positive or suspected COVID positive. It is concerning to hear that some of this protective equipment is being distributed based on a hierarchy within the hospital. It is very concerning to hear that appearances and the corporate bottom line are more important than worker safety. These behaviors and practices are not just negligent, they're reckless because they're putting your lives and your family's lives and those of patients at risk. It is very shocking to hear the stories of physical assault and sexual harassment. And your employer needs to have a zero tolerance policy related to these patterns and practices. Providence St. Joseph's Memorial Hospital has serious work to do. And I urge them to return to the bargaining table to address these concerns immediately without further retaliation to your greatest assets in your organization, your employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Dobbs.
Thank you, Andy. I will keep it brief, and I absolutely agree with and underscore what my fellow panelists have just said. You all are putting up with really unconscionable conditions, and we all thank you for what you do and for your passion and your compassion for your patients and for your colleagues that you bring to your work every day. As Esther said, we will stand with you. If there's anything that we can do to carry this message forward, please let us know. And I would remind everybody that Providence is in the process of trying to acquire a long-term lease for Healdsburg Hospital. There's work to be done, folks. Thanks.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Use your unespoused values weapon against other people is like a really core definition of hypocrisy. So what I'm hearing today from the brave folks who came forward and spoke is that Providence St. Joseph's Memorial Hospital is entirely hypocritical in the way it acts. It lacks integrity. It pretends to be a ministry of compassion and instead is actually heartless in its seeking for corporate profit. The good news I see out of today is that the values of compassion, dignity, justice, excellence, and integrity are alive and well. I thank everyone who testified today because I think you espouse those values to the highest standard. The good news for Providence St. Joe's Memorial Hospital is that this means that those values are available at your bargaining table when you choose to go back. Your employees are already demonstrating for you how to lead in this community. All you need to do is actually show up, listen to what they need to continue to do that work, and hopefully learn from their example. So my hope is that management would have half of the courage that was demonstrated by the employees today and would show back up to bargain.
Thank you. Bonnie. Bonnie, just, I want to say, has done such a huge amount of work to make this work today. And now this is her first opportunity to actually get to participate. Bonnie, do you have something for us?
The only thing I want to say is I cannot express enough of my gratitude for working with Larry and all of the employees. It is an extremely scary and horrible thing to have to face this. It is hard to do, and I am eternally grateful to you for doing this, and I couldn't be prouder to stand with you against this hospital. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to take the last word on the final thoughts as a panelist. I basically share every comment and every observation made by the panelists. And I particularly want to say that I too am optimistic despite listening to really, truly appalling and depressing comments from the hardworking caregivers who make the hospital operate successfully. As was pointed out, your working conditions are the patient's care conditions. So despite what a depressing story you tell in such a compelling manner, I'm optimistic because you are brave, you are courageous, you are focused. And I think that you're going to win, because even in these dark times, sometimes the people who are on the right side win. But I also really want to take this last opportunity at this moment to thank the board, the panel. My confusion in trying to read the recommendations was because they think collectively a lot faster than I could put it all together. So if it was in any way inept, that's my fault, not theirs. They've done a tremendous job to help you, and I believe they will continue to be there for you, and we will be there for you, and I know I will be there for you. I have a horrible voice, so I won't sing Solidarity Forever, but thank you very much. I now want to turn it back over to Mara to finish the board meeting. Mara?
Thank you, Andy. And thank you so much again. So many thank yous. I mean, first and foremost, thank you to the workers. I mean, everyone has said it, but it just can't be said enough. We completely understand the immense courage and bravery that it takes to stand up and speak out. And yet it is so critical. And I hope that it is not lost on our attendees for watching today that this isn't done in vain. This is done because we intend to fight and win and ensure that not only is there fairness at this hospital, but that our entire community is safer walking into the hospital halls of a Providence hospital. So again, thank you to the workers. Thank you for everybody that has come and stood with them. Thank you so much to the panelists for really spending so much time, not just today, but in preparation for today. And please remember that a report is coming out with the final recommendations where these testimonies will be printed, and we'll have some final thoughts as well from the panelists. So please check out our report. Thank you again to Supervisor Zane for coming on today and just for the relentless support this year. And again, thank you to President Roselli for stepping out of the national conference today to be here. And so this will be available for you to watch. Please share it. Please let folks know. Please spread this throughout the community. As we said, we encourage you to contact Providence and St. Joseph and let them know what you heard, and let them know what you think about what you've heard, and let them know that you don't think that this is the kind of hospital and the kind of care, and not only care for our patients, but care for the workers that should be taking place in our community. And you can go at any time to www.NUHW to read our former reports. It's never easy to listen to these hearings. I've been getting text messages flooding in for the last 2 hours of people saying just how heartbreaking it is to hear this. And it is always so difficult to put on these hearings and hear the atrocities. But as Andy said, I am also hopeful that we, when we come together, as Jobs with Justice says, when we show up for one another, we win. So thank you so much again. And that concludes our Workers' Rights Board hearing today. Thank you.